What if I told you that some of the governments we trust today were secretly toppled by a foreign agency? Hidden in the shadows, the CIA has orchestrated coups that reshaped nations, toppled leaders, and influenced millions of lives. From the jungles of Guatemala to the streets of Tehran, these covert operations were designed to protect interests, not democracy. But at what cost? In this video, we'll uncover the shocking stories behind CIA interventions and foreign coups, how ordinary citizens were caught in the crossfire, and how secret actions changed the course of history forever. Throughout modern history, intelligence agencies have operated in the shadows, influencing events far beyond their borders. Among them, the CIA stands out as a powerful force, often shaping the political fate of entire nations. Established in 1947, its mission was clear: gather intelligence and protect American interests during the height of the Cold War. But over the decades, its operations went far beyond spying. They included planning and executing foreign coups, toppling democratically elected leaders, and supporting regimes that aligned with U.S. strategic goals. One of the most infamous examples took place in Guatemala in 1954, where a democratically elected government was overthrown in the name of anti-communism, leaving the nation in chaos for decades. Similar covert actions occurred in Iran, Chile, and other countries, often justified as protecting freedom but leaving devastating consequences for ordinary citizens. In this video, we'll dive deep into these hidden histories. You'll discover how and why these interventions happened, the methods used by the CIA, and the long-term impact on the nations involved. From secret operations to economic manipulations, prepare to uncover a world of power, politics, and intrigue that most people have never seen. In 1954, Guatemala became the stage for one of the CIA's most notorious covert operations, known as Operation PBS-UC-ESS. At the center of this drama was President Jacobo Arbenz, a democratically elected leader who aimed to modernize his country and redistribute land to benefit the poor. Arbenz's reforms threatened the interests of powerful U.S. corporations, most notably the United Fruit Company, which controlled vast amounts of fertile land and wielded significant influence in Washington. The United States, fearing the spread of communism in Latin America during the Cold War, labeled Arbenz's government as a potential communist threat. Behind closed doors, the CIA began planning a secret campaign to overthrow him. They recruited local dissidents, trained them in military tactics, and launched a psychological warfare campaign to create fear and uncertainty among the Guatemalan population. Propaganda leaflets, radio broadcasts, and staged incidents made it appear that Arbenz's government was on the brink of collapse. On June 27, 1954, under intense pressure from both the CIA-backed rebels and international isolation, Arbenz resigned and fled the country. What seemed like a swift and decisive operation left Guatemala in chaos. A series of military dictatorships took power, leading to decades of political instability, civil war, and widespread human rights abuses. The lives of ordinary Guatemalans were forever changed, as communities were torn apart and countless people suffered from violence and displacement. Operation PB Success is a stark example of how the CIA wielded power behind the scenes, prioritizing corporate and strategic interests over democracy. It also set a precedent for future interventions across the globe, where covert operations would be seen as tools to shape governments according to U.S. objectives. The story of Guatemala reminds us that international politics is not always transparent. Beneath the surface of foreign policy lies a web of secret operations, manipulation, and a ruthless pursuit of power. An invisible hand that can alter the destiny of entire nations. In 1953, Iran faced a pivotal moment in its modern history, one that would shape its relationship with the United States for decades. The key figure in this drama was Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, a popular leader who had nationalized Iran's oil industry, previously controlled by the British-owned Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. This bold move angered both Britain and the United States, who feared losing control over oil resources and the potential spread of Soviet influence during the Cold War. In response, the CIA, in collaboration with Britain's MI6, launched Operation Ajax, a covert operation designed to remove Mossadegh from power and reinstall the Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, as a compliant leader. The plan combined propaganda, bribery, and psychological manipulation. American and British agents funded opposition groups, staged protests, and orchestrated fake demonstrations to create the impression of widespread unrest. Mossadegh's government, isolated and facing internal dissent, eventually crumbled under the pressure. On August 19, 1953, Mossadegh was overthrown, arrested, and placed under house arrest, while the Shah returned to power with strong U.S. backing. In the short term, the operation was deemed a success. Western interests regained control over Iranian oil, and Iran became a strategic ally in the Middle East. However, the long-term consequences were profound. The intervention fueled deep resentment toward the United States and Britain, contributing to the rise of anti-Western sentiment that would later culminate in the 1979 Iranian Revolution. Mossadegh became a symbol of national pride and resistance, while the Shah's authoritarian rule, supported by foreign powers, faced growing opposition. Operation Ajax serves as a stark reminder of how covert interventions can reshape nations. While governments may achieve immediate objectives, the ethical costs and long-term repercussions often outweigh the benefits. Ordinary citizens, caught in the crossfire, bear the brunt of political manipulation, propaganda, and foreign interference. The 1953 coup in Iran illustrates the delicate balance between power, strategy, and morality in international relations. It exposes how secret operations, conducted in the name of national interest, can leave scars that last for generations, altering the course of history in ways that are still felt today. Beyond Guatemala and Iran, the CIA orchestrated numerous covert operations across the globe during the Cold War, each leaving a lasting impact on the countries involved. One of the most infamous examples is Chile, 1973. The democratically elected socialist president Salvador Allende aimed to implement social reforms and nationalize key industries, threatening U.S. economic interests. The CIA funneled support to opposition groups, encouraged strikes, and promoted unrest, culminating in a military coup led by General Augusto Pinochet. Allende died during the coup, and Pinochet's dictatorship began, marked by widespread repression and human rights abuses that lasted nearly 2 decades. In Congo, 1960, the CIA played a significant role in the removal of Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba, who sought to reduce foreign influence in the newly independent nation. Fearing Soviet alignment, the U.S. covertly supported rival factions, which eventually led to Lumumba's arrest and assassination, leaving Congo politically unstable for years. Similarly, in Vietnam and Laos, the CIA conducted secret operations to counter communist movements, training local militias, funding paramilitary groups, and engaging in covert military campaigns. While intended to curb the spread of communism, these interventions often escalated conflicts and destabilized regions. Even smaller nations like the Dominican Republic experienced CIA involvement. In 1961-65, after the assassination of dictator Rafael Trujillo, the CIA monitored political developments closely, supporting factions that aligned with U.S. interests while undermining others, ensuring American influence remained dominant. These interventions share common threads. They were motivated by strategic or economic interests, justified as protection against communism, and executed using secret operations that bypassed public scrutiny. While some may have yielded short-term geopolitical gains, the long-term consequences were devastating. Political instability, human rights violations, and deep-seated resentment toward the United States. These cases highlight a sobering truth. Covert operations may succeed tactically, but often fail morally. The CIA's involvement in these nations reshaped political landscapes, influenced generations, and left scars that persist today, reminding us that the pursuit of power in secrecy carries profound and lasting consequences. The CIA's covert interventions relied on a combination of subtle manipulation, strategic planning, and sometimes brute force. One of the most common tactics was propaganda. By controlling the narrative through newspapers, radio broadcasts, and leaflets, the agency could influence public opinion, create fear, and portray targeted leaders as threats to national security. This psychological warfare often made populations believe a coup or rebellion was inevitable, reducing resistance and increasing compliance. Another key tactic was funding and supporting opposition groups. The CIA would secretly provide money, weapons, and training to political factions, military units, or rebel groups who opposed the current government. These proxies acted as the visible face of unrest, while the CIA remained hidden, allowing the agency to shape events without direct involvement. Political manipulation was also central. The CIA cultivated relationships with key politicians, military officers, and influential businessmen to ensure loyalty and cooperation. By bribing officials, spreading misinformation, or orchestrating staged crises, they could destabilize governments from within, creating confusion and panic. In some cases, covert military operations were employed, including targeted airstrikes, sabotage, or paramilitary interventions, designed to intimidate leaders and weaken governments. These operations were often combined with economic pressure, such as sanctions or the threat of cutting foreign aid, to force compliance. Ultimately, these methods were carefully calculated to achieve U.S. strategic objectives while minimizing visible American involvement. The combination of propaganda, proxy forces, political manipulation, and covert military actions created a powerful toolkit for intervention, allowing the CIA to alter the course of nations without open warfare. By understanding these tactics, it becomes clear how intelligence operations could dramatically influence politics, economies, and societies, often leaving long-lasting consequences for the nations involved and their citizens. CIA interventions and foreign coups may have achieved short-term political objectives, but the long-term consequences were often devastating. In countries like Guatemala, Iran, and Chile, these covert operations destabilized governments, weakened institutions, and left ordinary citizens vulnerable to violence, oppression, and poverty. Democratically elected leaders were removed, replaced by authoritarian regimes that often suppressed dissent through fear and brutality. The human cost was enormous, with countless people imprisoned, tortured, or killed. Beyond immediate suffering, these interventions created long-lasting political instability. In Guatemala, decades of civil war followed the CIA-backed coup of 1954, leaving deep scars in society. In Iran, the 1953 overthrow of Mossadegh sowed seeds of resentment toward the United States, which contributed to the anti-Western sentiment that fueled the 1979 Iranian Revolution. Chile, under Pinochet, endured systematic human rights abuses that reverberated for generations. The ethical implications of these operations have been widely criticized. Many historians and political analysts argue that the CIA prioritized corporate and geopolitical interests over democracy, freedom, and human rights. While interventions were often justified under the guise of fighting communism, the hidden agendas reveal a pattern of exploitation and manipulation. Moreover, these actions undermined the United States' reputation abroad. Countries that experienced foreign coups often viewed America as a power willing to interfere in sovereign affairs, fostering distrust and anti-American sentiment that persists today. In hindsight, CIA interventions demonstrate a harsh truth. Achieving strategic objectives through covert operations can come at an immense moral and social cost. While leaders may have considered these operations necessary for national security, the consequences for the people and the countries involved were profound, illustrating that secret power moves can have far-reaching and often tragic impacts. The history of CIA interventions and foreign coups reveals a hidden world where power, politics, and secrecy collide. From Guatemala to Iran, Chile, and beyond, these operations shaped nations, toppled governments, and left lasting consequences for millions of ordinary people. While the immediate objectives often seemed successful, protecting economic interests, curbing communism, or installing friendly regimes, the human cost was immense and the long-term political instability undeniable. These stories remind us that history is not always as it appears on the surface. Behind closed doors, decisions made in secrecy can change the course of entire nations, creating ripple effects that last for decades. Ordinary citizens, caught in the crossfire, suffered displacement, violence, and oppression, while governments manipulated power to serve hidden agendas. Understanding this history is crucial, not only to acknowledge the past, but also to recognize the ongoing impact of covert operations on global politics today. The CIA's interventions serve as a stark lesson. Power wielded in secrecy may achieve short-term goals, but it often leaves behind a legacy of mistrust, conflict, and suffering. As we reflect on these events, we are reminded to question narratives, seek the truth, and never underestimate the hidden forces that shape our world. The story of covert power is both fascinating and chilling, a reminder that the shadowy corridors of history often hold the most shocking secrets.